we'll do the intro.
Okay, we are recording.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming to our water issue seminar this morning. This morning, we get the chance to hear again from Cassie Champion and Jana Larson, who originally tried to give us this talk in our Waters and Watershed Conference in January. And it didn't go so well, only because of technical difficulties. And so we thought, we really must have them back to tell us about this really important work that they're going to tell us about this morning. They're going to tell us and describe the Sacred Waters Shared Future campaign and its unique collaboration framework of local, regional, and state government agencies and nonprofits working together to create a platform for organizations to align their agendas with river conservation, strengthen relationships among partners, and enhance public awareness of the river's significance. It is great to have you guys with us. A little bit more about our speakers. Cassie Champion is a principal environmental scientist for the Met Council Environmental Services, coordinating the stream and tributary monitoring program. And since 2021, she has facilitated a group of regional partners to plan and launch the Sacred Water Shared Future campaign. And Jana Larson has been working with us here since, I think it is 2024, if I'm right, to coordinate the We Are Waters Minnesota program, a traveling exhibit that no doubt you have heard about, and outreach program that builds our state's capacity to protect and improve Minnesota's two greatest resources, water and community. Interesting about Jana, prior to becoming part of our team here, she was the senior outreach coordinator for the Met Council Environmental Services Division and at Hamline University's Center for Global Environmental Education. She created the award-winning Adopt a Drain program that I have been a fan of for a long time, and I'm sure you have too, which has now more than 18,000 drain adopters across 17 states. Quite an accomplishment. Great to have you guys with us. Take it away. The floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Mark. Thanks for having us. And we did sneak in a third speaker, so we didn't send any notes on Erica Bjelland, but she's going to talk about the green cities. So we'll get to all of it. But thanks so much for having us to talk about the Sacred Water Shared Future campaign that's coming this year in 2026. It's unfolding this year in 2026. So I'm Cassie Champion from Met Council, and I don't think everyone on this call is from St. Paul Central Office, so maybe if you're not from the Twin Cities, Met Council is sort of new to you. It's the regional planning agency for the Twin Cities, and Environmental Services is the wastewater utility for the region. So if you've ever flushed a toilet in the metro area, it made its way to where I work. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that later. Since 2021, I've been working with a group of regional partners, including Pollution Control Agency and the Minnesota Humanities Center, to develop the Sacred Water Shared Future campaign. During 2026, organizations around the metro are planning and hosting a broad variety of events to connect people to the Mississippi River. And I'm going to start off our presentation by explaining the campaign and a little history about the Mississippi River and the Twin Cities. Then Jana will talk about how Pollution Control Agency is incorporating Sacred Water Shared Future into We Are Water MN and Eco Experience during 2026. And then we'll finish with Erica Bjelland, who will talk about Green Step Cities Impact 2026, the Water Challenge. And that's a third way that Pollution Control Agency is joining the campaign. So Sacred Water Shared Future is a campaign that celebrates a century of progress from 1926 to 2026 and inspires continued action to restore and protect the river into the next century. Before I jump into describing this century, though, I'm going to acknowledge that 1 century is not very much time in the 10,000-year life of the river or the people who have lived here for thousands of years. The population growth from 1860 through the early 1900s was unprecedented in the long history of the river and its people, and the effect on the aquatic ecosystem was devastating. 1926 was the first water quality survey of the Mississippi River in the Twin Cities. Unfortunately, for the river and for local residents, the study confirmed what everybody already suspected. The Mississippi River was essentially dead, and the primary cause was raw human sewage flowing directly into the river. 1926 was an inflection point in the relationship between Minneapolis-Saint Paul and the Mississippi River. It was the beginning of the first commitment to repair the harm caused by the sudden, rapid population growth. In 2026, we have a unique opportunity to commemorate that original commitment and to renew regional commitment so that the Mississippi River will be loved by current Twin Cities residents and by all future generations. And I will describe the results of that 1926 water quality survey, but first I'm going to set the stage by just briefly describing the history of population growth, history of sewers, and history of commerce. So here's my story number one, the history of regional population growth. The painting that you can see here was made in 1846. At this time, the Mississippi River was wild and free-flowing, and the human population in the region was well distributed. This painting shows Bedote, the confluence of the Minnesota River with the Mississippi River, kind of just upstream from central office. Bedote is the Dakota word for confluence, and the Dakota name for the Mississippi River is Wakpa-Tonka, Great River. The name that we use, Mississippi, is much closer to the Ojibwe word, which is Mississippi, also meaning Great River. Starting around 1860, the regional population began to grow in an ecologically unprecedented way. This is a diagram of population growth in Minneapolis, and it's only Minneapolis. There's also Saint Paul, several other population hubs. The region was growing like crazy. More and more and more and more and more and more people were living very close together, doing what people always do. And now I'm moving on to my number two story. And yes, that was 3 poop jokes in 2 sentences. You're welcome. My number 2 story is the history of sewers. I'm going to read you just a small excerpt from this 1877 editorial from the Minneapolis Tribune. It is a well-settled fact among scientists that all other provisions for the health and comfort of a city are subordinate to the one vital desideratum of adequate sewerage. You can see the title of this editorial, The Invitation to Death. The writers understood the public health crisis caused by the exposure to human sewage. So by 1900, there were more than 120 miles of sewer carrying wastewater from homes and businesses directly to the Mississippi River. The sewer that you see here is at Lake Street in Minneapolis in 1928. Sewers made the city safer for people by removing much of the public health threat from direct exposure to raw sewage. And a good, reliable annual spring flood washed much of the sewage and carried it downstream. Leading to my third and final story, which is the history of commerce. The growing cities of Minneapolis and Saint Paul needed a reliable way to get goods in and out of the area, and the Mississippi River is still an important corridor for Midwestern agricultural products to get out to the wider world. To accommodate this shipping traffic, in 1917, the first lock and dam was built on the Mississippi River in Saint Paul, holding in place the water and the sewage. This abrupt change from free-flowing river to a series of still stepped pools created by the lock and dam system is the final element in my story about the death of the Mississippi River. So here comes that 1926 water quality data that I promised you. This is August average dissolved oxygen from 1926, and you can see it there plotted with the standards. You can see that the dissolved oxygen is much too low to support life. And you can see the consequences for the fish community. In 1926, the Bureau of Fisheries surveyed 42 miles of river and found only 3 fish. And that short-nosed gar found in Spring Lake was described as very sluggish. But what was it like? You know, what did people see and smell near the river during the teens and the 20s and the 30s? So what we've got here is a still photo captured from some 1933 film of the Mississippi River in the Twin Cities. The short quotes that you can read are from the scientists and engineers who wrote the 1933 Metropolitan Drainage Commission report. And there's another written account preserved for us, a travel memoir from a trip in 1933 called River Journey. Clarence Junk launched near the Washington Avenue Bridge in Minneapolis in October of 1933, and he left us this vivid description of the river. A houseboat has been lowered into the sewage-laden water where fish die, bloat, and turn idly about in the eddies, showing their worm-infested bodies like a curse on the men who infected their world. Continuously, their white mouths nudge the manure of humanity, the offwash of the streets and gutters, and here, curling under our starboard side of brown foam bubbles and steams. Such is our baptism into the great river. The Mississippi River is and always has been one of the great rivers of the world. School children everywhere learn about the Mississippi River in the same way that you or I learned about the Nile or the Amazon. And it is heartbreaking to read about and see images of this complete ecological collapse. The response of Minneapolis and Saint Paul is to collect the sewage and conduct it to a treatment plant located as far downstream from the more densely populated areas as is feasible, where the sewage may be treated and the plant effluent disinfected. And that's where I work. In 1938, Metro Water Resources Recovery Facility began collecting and treating sewage before returning the water to the river. And reports tell us that within 4 months, the floating sludge mats disappeared from the river surface. And here's a little sample of the rebound of the water quality of the river. This is 1926 Riverdale that I already showed you compared to 2025. The increase in dissolved oxygen was crucial to the recovery of the aquatic life, including the fish. Here, you can see Met Council we don't do fish surveys. So this is data that I took from the Pollution Control Agency website from 2016, matching locations as best as I could. And of course, sampling methods changed over the ensuing 90 years. But what we see is 3 fish collected in 1926 and 2,597 fish collected in 2016. The fishery is greatly improved, and that has brought about the return of eagles, pelicans, swans. The river is popular for fishing, boating, hiking, kayaking. The 72-mile river corridor through the Twin Cities has been a national park since 1988. The region embraces its beautiful river so much that this history of ecological peril has been lost. When I ask, is the Mississippi River cleaner now than it was 100 years ago? I typically get the answer that the river is dirtier now than it has ever been, which is not true. The 1926 Water Quality Survey, plus all the descriptive documentation before and after, tell the story of the death of one of the planet's great rivers. However, that history is generally lost to Minnesota residents. 1926 was an inflection point in the relationship between Minneapolis and Saint Paul and the Mississippi River. Sacred Water Shared Future will create a new inflection point in that relationship. Here's the organizations that have been involved in campaign planning. So since about 2021, we've been working together, and we've got a really nice representation of government, watershed district, nonprofits in the Twin Cities who care about the Mississippi River have been part of this planning work. And I'm going to end my portion of the presentation with the slide showing our website, and then you can use this QR code to get to our website. Sacred Water Shared Future is celebrating community, storytelling, education, and conservation with a year-long campaign during 2026. The campaign honors the central role that the Mississippi River has played in our region while acknowledging its deep history, sacredness, and resilience. Our hope is that the campaign will inspire collaboration and shared action in 2026 and set the stage for the next 100 years of healing for both the river and the life it supports. And with that background, I'm going to turn the presentation over now to Jana Larson to share about Pollution Control Agency's plans for Sacred Water Shared Future themes in We Are Water MN and Eco Experience. Go ahead, Jana.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to present about two of the ways MPCA is participating in Sacred Water Shared Future. And I want to make sure to thank Cassie for having this amazing vision. I remember a meeting of the watershed partners in March of 2020. That was, I think, the first time I met Cassie, and she came and presented about this idea she had to mark this kind of inauspicious but also auspicious event with this collaboration. And it was like 2 weeks or a week before the world shut down for COVID. And 2026 seems so far off then. And now it seems like this small miracle that Cassie had this vision and sort of over a period of a really long time, got all these people on board, and now we're doing this, and I'm so thrilled to be, participating. So thank you, Cassie. I'm gonna figure out how I advance my slides here. Okay. So I think most of you are probably familiar with We Are Water Minnesota. That's the program I coordinate now at the MPCA. And it's a project of the Pollution Control Agency, the Minnesota Humanities Center. And then we have a lot of state partners, the Historical Society, University of Minnesota's Extension, the Board of Water and Soil Resources, and the Minnesota Departments of Agriculture, Health, and Natural Resources. And if you're not familiar, which I think most of you are, it's a traveling exhibit and community engagement program that aims to strengthen Minnesotans' relationship with water, and through that encourage water stewardship. It's a little different than a traditional environmental education program in that it's about building capacity in communities, both to protect and restore water resources, but also to work together on many issues. And we do that by inviting people to share stories about water at community events and through interactive elements in the exhibit. We find that asking people to start by sharing stories with each other, sometimes across differences in their communities, about how they value water and how, listening to how their neighbors value and depend on water for health, safety, well-being, and joy. Rather than, asking people to share about water issues, we find that people are, more apt to really listen to one another and find commonalities. And that helps us achieve this end goal of building relationships between people and organizations that allow them to make these tough decisions about water and other community issues in their community. So I thought I would start by sharing a story that we just collected. It's hot off the press. It's not, yet part of our exhibit, but it will be when the exhibit moves in April to Capital Region Watershed District in Saint Paul. Devin Ashley Brown is a resident of Saint Paul, and she has this amazing story about her relationship to the river. And so all you need to do is listen, but I will kind of let you know that after the story, I'm going to ask people to share in the chat about a time that a body of water inspired you. And if, just a few sentences, which body of water was it? What did you do, or what happened as a result? So we tested this. I hope it works. Devin's story is about 4 minutes, so I'll play that for you now. Okay, so that's Devin's story about her relationship with the river and what it inspired her to do. I don't expect that anyone is going to have a story where a body of water spoke to them and made them change everything about their life and the way they thought about it. But take a minute to think about a time when a body of water inspired you. And maybe if you've got something to share, put it in the chat. I'd love to hear about some of the inspiring water bodies out there. You can also unmute yourself and just share out loud if you'd like to as well. I was recently in a group of people, and I asked this question as an icebreaker. It was a cohort from the Itasca State Park who are going to be hosting We Are Water. I'll tell you about that soon over the summer. And everyone talked about their relationship to water as like a different waterway as kids, and how, you know, it was so inspiring to be out there kind of like messing around in the water and catching stuff. And I've often found that people who kind of go into environmental fields have some sort of story like that about their childhood of being really close to a place or a body of water as a kid. Let's see. I see. I'm going to read some out loud if that's okay. So Britt shares, the St. Croix River was a formative water body for me. I spent a lot of time learning about myself and science by exploring it. And here I am now. Yeah. Jana Schmidt. I hope I get people's names right. I visited the Okavango Delta in 2022, and the amazing animal life was unforgettable. Also, the way people make a life in the area is really cool to learn about. Lake Superior, it can be calm and dangerous in the same day. It puts things into perspective. Kristen Dieterman, I've lived my whole life on the banks of the Mississippi River in Winona, Minnesota. Not only in Minnesota do we have the weather and seasons, the river ebbs and flows along with the temperatures and seasons. This rising and falling of the Mississippi River over the years reminds me that life ebbs and flows. It's okay to rise and fall and rise again. Oh, that's beautiful. Jen Cater, more of an experience philosophy inspired by a paddle. Back when I taught canoeing through I Can Paddle, I remember doing a training on running rapids, and we talked about the importance of taking advantage of opportunities to eddy out, to pause, collect yourself, make a plan, and continue. I look for my eddies in life the same way I did running rapids in my solo canoe. Oh, so much. You're poets out there, you guys. So beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Oh, one more. Okay, Kevin McDonald. I have been inspired by the Atlantic Ocean, looking west from several European countries and thinking about the perilous journey across it for many immigrants to North America has impacted me. Except Native Americans, we all have an immigrant story. Thinking about recent events with ICE, I find ever more compassion. That's beautiful too. Yeah, one thing I've noticed recently after listening to Devin Ashley Brown's story was how many people share stories with We Are Water about the way that water speaks to them. Like they actually use water bodies as a kind of oracle. And then I looked it up, and that is actually like throughout human history, rivers have been oracles for people, ways of sort of seeing into the future and having deep questions answered. Oh, one more. Okay, and then we'll move on. When I was very young, I lived in Wyoming. One of our elementary school field trips was an interpretive raft tour on the Platte River. Learning about the natural history and the role of the river in humans' lives throughout history was just magical to little kid me. Let's call it my spark moment for water. Okay, I do think we need to move on. There's another beautiful one about White Bear Lake. Okay, I'll read it. I grew up next to White Bear Lake. It was a big part of my life and community. Birthday parties at the beach, bonfires, watching sunsets, swimming, canoeing, kayaking, etc. made a cross stitch of it last year. I love living near a body of water and now living near the Mississippi River. Ooh, beautiful cross stitch. Thanks, you guys. Okay, keep sharing your stories in the chat if you'd like as I move on. But as you can see, like a big part of We Are Water is having people think about their relationship to water. And especially this year, we are, how do I get this to move forward? We Are Water is asking people to think about their relationship to the Mississippi River. We are currently on our 41st host site in our 10th year of We Are Water, and that's at Oxbow Park and Zolman Zoo in Byron, so sort of down in the lower right-hand corner of the map. And then the rest of the year, we'll be at sites along the Mississippi River, Capital Region Watershed District in Saint Paul, April 23rd through June 14th, then up to Itasca State Park, June 18th through August 10th, at Great River Arts in Little Falls, Minnesota, August 13th through October 5th. And then finally, Anoka County Library in Blaine, October 8th through November 30th. So sort of following the Mississippi River, not exactly in order. And at each of these sites, the community will host our traveling exhibit, which is about 1,000 square feet and about 20 interactive pieces that engage people in learning about the science, culture, history, and personal stories about water. These include several panels that are focused on local content or the local story of water in the community that we work with each host site to develop. Each host site participates in about 6 to 12 months of support and planning before the exhibit arrives in their location. And at each of those, in the early stages of those planning sessions, we bring out the RAPS report, or the One Watershed, One Plan Comprehensive Watershed Management Plan, so that each host site can see the priority issues and strategies identified for their watershed and take those into consideration as they think about sort of their long-term goals for their community, who they want to partner with, and how they want to engage their community. And then each host site, and this year we'll have at least 4 public events that bring people to the exhibit and ask them to share stories and interact with one another around their relationship to water. And those take a lot of forms. We've had, I always tell about the Shakopee Mdewakanton Sioux community. One of their events was this fashion show where Native fashion designers showed their collections on, and there was like a DJ, and we all did our best to sort of dress fashionable. We also have, paddles or people being taken out. There was a lichen tour out at Nye Nature Center recently. And we were just at the Minnesota Valley National Wildlife Refuge. They had a luminary walk in the winter that was really beautiful. Just lots of ways to engage the community. And all of these events will be posted on the Sacred Water Shared Future calendar on their website. So this year you'll have a lot of opportunities to get out and think about, engage with other people in fun ways about the river. We don't exactly know what all those events will be yet, but look to the calendar for that. It is our 10th year of We Are Water, so we're also holding a couple of celebrations tied to Sacred Water Shared Future, but also celebrating our 10 years. So we're holding a Bidote tour in May, led by the Minnesota Humanities Center. And then over the summer, probably in July, we plan to host a paddle share canoe trip on the river that ends in a picnic at Boom Island, and you'd be invited to that. Yes, 10 years, amazing. So that's kind of how We Are Water is going to be focusing on the river this year. I also coordinate the water area of Eco Experience, which I'm sure most of you are aware. Since 2006, we have been in the Progress Center at Eco Experience. It's this amazing celebration of the environment with lots of exhibits about land, air, water, climate, food, etc. And this year, the water area is going to focus on this Sacred Water Shared Future. We're building a few new exhibits that will be kind of in the center area of the eco experience. And one of them, we just have a sketch right now, but it sort of represents Lake Itasca and the headwaters of the river. So it's this kind of immersive experience where you walk between these beautiful lily pads and kind of this clean water environment. And then there will be opportunities for people to take selfies kind of with, these are flowers in the background, but there'll be lily pads and kind of thinking about the beautiful clean water of Lake Itasca up at the headwaters. We're also going to, on the left, you may recognize this report, but we're going to, based on MPCA's kind of monitoring of the river, we're going to create these maps that show sort of water quality now in the Mississippi River based on drinkable, swimmable, fishable, and I say consumable, edible, like whether or not you can eat the fish. We're also having an interactive display. I'm showing what's called a split flat board. Maybe you're familiar with the sort of like old school train displays where the letters would flip and make this kind of mesmerizing motion and sound. And it will be a station where people can send messages to the river, and then they'll sort of be vetted and show up like, you know, within 20-30 seconds, they'll be able to see their message to the river come up on the split flat board. So that'll be fun. And we're also building what's called a cranky that tells the story that Cassie just kind of overviewed, this sort of 100 years of water quality in the Mississippi River from dead ecosystem to, you know, what we have now, which is this pretty inspiring fishery and place for recreation. And a cranky, as you can see on the left, it's a long scroll story, and we'll have a huge handle you can crank to make the story happen. On the right, you see people, you know, sort of laying it out. It'll be one continuous image that tells this story. We're still, I'm on the writing committee of that. We're still working out how that's going to happen, but it's going to be beautiful, and you will see it there. So before I turn it over to Erica to talk about Green Step Cities, I just want to highlight that there are lots of ways that you can be involved. Please sign up for a shift at Eco Experience. You can work in the water area with the new exhibits, or, at the water quality table, or anywhere in Eco Experience, obviously. We're inviting you to attend that paddle over the summer. You can look for information about that on the Sacred Water Shared Future website. Also watch for We Are Water exhibit and events coming to all those locations if they're near you. Promote these events to friends, invite people, let them know about them, and just kind of generally get the word out about Sacred Water Shared Future. And then I think many of you probably have river events or river focused things that you can also share on the Sacred Water Shared Future website. Put them on the calendar as well. On that website, there's a link to something that allows you to share your story about the river. Some of these stories here with the Minnesota Story Collective, which is part of the Minnesota government, and you can click on a link and share your story about the river. And also there are some resources, some communications resources you can find there. There's a draft newsletter article. If you kind of edit one of the many MPCA newsletters or other newsletters, please share some of these communications resources on via those various things. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Erica now, and then afterwards we'll open it for questions and ask you to share about ways you think you or your programs might contribute or participate in Sacred Water Shared Future. So thanks. I'll stop sharing.
Sweet. That was awesome. Thanks, Jana. Okay, great. I'll see that. Okay. Yeah, as Jana mentioned, I'm Erica Bjelland and I work with the Green Step program, and we have a focus on water this year as well, partly because Sacred Water Shared Future is happening this year and fun things with water in general. So we started this collective action for Green Step communities this year. This year's focus is going to be water, but if anyone here is not focused on water at the PCA, we're going to have different focuses in future areas like water, soil, etc. So this is our inaugural one, which makes sense in Minnesota. So if you're not familiar with Green Step, we are a challenge, assistance, and recognition program for sustainability initiatives and actions. So the challenge is that there's a bunch of 181 possible actions you can take related to sustainability. And this is for cities and tribal nations. They sign up for the program and then they take these actions, and there's also different steps that they have to take in order to get the recognition. And then we also provide technical assistance, tours, workshops for communities. And then I feel like what we're maybe most recognized for is the recognition piece. We give out awards at the League of Minnesota Cities conference to cities that are participating. And then we have these signs that hopefully if you haven't seen before, you'll recognize now that a city or tribal nation says, we are committed to sustainability, and they get the Green Step sign. And then on the left is our blocks, where as you move up the steps in the actions that you take, you get the blocks as well. Yes, and as I mentioned, we have 181 possible actions. It's literally everything under the sun you could think of related to best practices related to sustainability. And we did, our Green Corps member last year helped us do some outreach to cities. We've been a program for about 15 years. So talking to folks of like, what do you want new from us? And one of the things that came out with that was like, we want some new, different challenges, different exciting things we can think of. So we are each year going to focus on some different actions that we can highlight of our 181 plus some new ones. And then at the end of the year, celebrate like this year related to water, we all did this. All the communities like report out kind of this. And next year, I think we're going to do air. Then the Air We Breathe report is coming out to kind of connect it to some of the bigger things that are happening at the state level too. So yeah, that's how we came up with this Impact 26. Next year will be Impact 27, air. But yeah, as I mentioned, we wanted to connect it also to like what's happening at the state level. So one of the reasons water also made sense was there's a bunch of reports that came out late last year related to water. And yeah, like I said, next year, air. So if you have future topics in the year that would make sense too, we're really excited to try to partner with like these big statewide plans. And then like, what does that mean for like a city or a tribal nation too, and connecting it to those. So I'm just going to briefly talk about some of the actions that we have. So we broke it up into community engagement, regulation, and infrastructure, and then things that can be done in a year. So not in huge infrastructure projects, but different actions that cities and tribal nations can focus on. So for example, community engagement, this relates well to the septic, like having outreach related to septic systems or wells, more applicable in greater Minnesota, have some workshops related to increasing water workforce. What we heard from some partners at the PCA was a big deal in the water world. Regulation, I was excited about these, adopting we have sustainable ordinances on our website that communities can adopt. So adopting like a chloride reduction ordinance or shoreline restoration ordinance, something that you could do in a year. And then infrastructure was harder to pick out, but things like rainwater harvesting system or like a rain barrel on your city building was an idea. And then I I didn't have room for the other actions, but under all those actions, we have how it's related to, this one says green step action, but also like this is in the nutrient reduction report. So trying to connect it to those bigger things too. Yes, and then we also have been doing workshops that are focused on water, so it helps us focus on a topic each year too. So we had wastewater optimization, we did a data center webinar, we'll probably do some tours too. And then we also, connected with this, Jana, we're going to work with the Little Falls community at their We Are Water exhibit too, and do some work with the city of Little Falls too. Yeah, and that's all I have. This is the link to our website. There's the QR code there too, but I'll leave it open for questions for any of us. And maybe I'll leave this up for just a minute or two, but this is all of our contact information if you want to reach out to any of us.
Thank you so much, Erica, Jana, and Cassie. Wonderful presentations, great conversation happening in the chat. I'm gonna go back to the beginning. I think there was one question and then we had a bunch of wonderful stories about water bodies. And then if folks have any other questions they want to put in the chat, they can feel free to do that or unmute and ask. That is also fair game. So we had Jesse ask, oh, great presentation, Cassie. So much progress in the last 100 years. Are there any rough estimates of the council and city's financial costs for wastewater treatment plant construction and sanitary and storm sewer separation work since the 1930s? So kind of a big question there.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know that much about like the costs or the budgets. So sorry, I can't answer it very well, but the Minneapolis and Saint Paul Sewage District was formed in 1933. So the foundational documents about the development of like the interceptor sewers and metro water resources recovery facility, those would be kind of like, if you're looking, that would be the right era to start. And then storm sewer separation, that really has its roots in the late 80s, 88, I think, and took place over most of the 90s. But costs, I don't know that much about, sorry.
Okay. Let's see here. Mike said, many successes to be celebrated. I'm wondering if you have a sense if most of the improvement in water quality has come in the last 50 years or so since the passage of the Clean Water Act. I recall a report from the 60s where no fish were collected as well, I'm assuming in the Mississippi.
Oh, yeah, I'd be interested to hear that. I think that's a really good point. You know, with this, like, it's an exciting story that wastewater was collected starting in 1938 and the kind of immediate improvement to the reaches of the river that had been previously just inundated with sewage. Now the sewage is going somewhere else and the river is recovering. But that really didn't address point source industrial pollution. That came later. And there's some really interesting history that I don't know well enough to say much about, but there were two really significant oil spills, one like petroleum oil, one soybean oil in the 60s. And that was sort of the tipping point event that formed the Pollution Control Agency, which is actually older than the EPA. So you're right, just telling the story only of wastewater doesn't encompass that kind of industrial pollution that was addressed over time, and then especially by the Clean Water Act. So I would be happy to have other timeline resources to extend my timeline from 38 kind of into the future, but that's not, I don't know that stuff off the top of my head.
Awesome, thank you. Jesse just asked, what was wastewater treatment like in 1938? Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, good question. So it was what we call now preliminary treatment and primary treatment. So preliminary treatment is like the first step of getting rid of the biggest stuff. So if you like the display in the Science Museum where they show the toys or deodorant or all the, the big things, that comes out in preliminary treatment. And then primary treatment is, I call it settling the heavy stuff and floating the floaty stuff and getting rid of that, both of those things, and then disinfecting with chlorine. So that kind of preliminary, primary, and disinfection, that was the first go around of what wastewater treatment was. It's a lot more elaborate than that now.
Did they
Absolutely.
disinfect with chlorine in 1938?
It was the first and largest chemical wastewater treatment plant in the world when it was built. So that was a big deal.
Oh, cool.
Wow, look at us go. Okay. Kevin asked, maybe too technical or off topic. One of the next steps for Met Council is the construction and operation of a new incinerator for sewage sludge. Has there been any internal conversations to recover phosphorus from ash generated from incinerated sludge? In addition to increased incineration capacity, we need to plan for capital investment to achieve phosphorus recovery. Recovered phosphorus products have lower leaching and runoff potential than conventional fertilizers. Okay, that was a lot.
Yeah, I didn't know that last bit. That's interesting. I think the shortest answer is no. And I know that in Europe, they are like building silos to store that ash in the hopes that when the future technology exists to recover the phosphorus from the ash, that they'll have this stockpile of ash ready to work on. But the answer for us locally is no. I mean, other than it kind of like the researchy, thinky phase, but as far as like rolling out a technology or a storage facility,
not so much. Okay. I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat. If folks want to unmute. Oh, just kidding. Every time I say that. Oh, yeah. An opportunity for U of M or NRRI via LCCMR. Oh, and then in a comment, AURI is working on phosphorus recovery from anaerobic digesters. So related. Yeah, if anyone has other questions, feel free to unmute or put those in the chat. Otherwise, we can wrap up a couple minutes early here this morning. And give folks a chance to grab another drink or coffee before their next meeting. So I'm not seeing anything else, so I'll go ahead and wrap up. Thank you so much, Erica, Cassie, and Jana, for spending your morning with us. I'm glad we were able to have you after your previous attempt at the presentation didn't go as well. So we're so thrilled to have had you this morning and really appreciate your time. And everybody enjoy the rest of your gloomy Thursday.
thanks for having us.
Thank you.